Welcome to my channel.
In a house built on bloodlines, one boy was born to be forgot. Magic was everything to me, a radiant power that lit up my entire world. It was so potent, people whispered it was a trace left behind by the gods themselves. Mages were a rarity, perhaps 1 in 10,000, and I was the first in the Empire's history to claim the throne at such a young age. Gifted with that very power, I had become an emperor. It truly felt like a glorious new era for mages was dawning, with me leading the way. But then my world fractured, replaced by the cold reality of stone and iron bars.
What's so special about magic anyway? It's a power for inferior humans. You're utterly helpless in these magic restraints, aren't you? Isn't that right, Uncle Ian?
My consciousness snapped back to the training grounds, my body bruised and bound, with the hostile noble's face leering over me. He was enjoying this, watching me struggle, just as another man had once taken pleasure in watching me when I was younger. I remembered the central administrator, how he'd warned me that mages were often peasants, and that I'd be cast out if my powers were discovered. But seeing the hostile noble delight in my weakness, I finally understood the central administrator's true intentions behind that warning. He hadn't been worried for me at all. He was simply envious of the very magic he called inferior. The hostile noble's face twisted in glee, and he brought his fist down, crushing my hand against the stone floor.
What does any of that matter? I'm the one standing over you now. And you're the one groveling at my feet. But since we're family, I'll be generous and make your death a swift one.
Just as his blade began its descent, a sharp cry of "Sir" echoed from a nearby archway.
What is it?
The hostile noble glanced over his shoulder, distracted, his sword halting just inches from my face. His boot, however, remained planted firmly on my chest. My head was still pressed against the cold, unyielding stone. The world seemed to hold its breath. Time stretched into an unbearable, silent stillness. Every sound had vanished, leaving only a deafening quiet. The air grew thick and heavy, with unspoken tension. I was trapped in a frozen, soundless moment. Nothing moved, nothing made a sound. The silence felt like a physical weight pressing down on me. It was an absolute, suffocating void. I could hear the blood pounding in my own ears, and nothing else. The quiet stretched on, pulling taut like a bowstring. Each passing second felt like an eternity. And then the silence finally broke.
"From here on," Naum said, his smile widening, "you'll have to figure things out for yourself."
A blinding flash of golden light erupted around us, and I screamed at him, demanding to know what he was doing. The light pulsed, swallowing everything in its glow as I shrieked his name in a panic. That's when I saw his finger tracing the glowing lines of a magical array on the floor, sealing my fate. My voice cracked as I pleaded with him to stop, to undo the spell before it was too late.
"It's too late," he said with chilling calm, his eyes meeting mine from where I lay bleeding. "I've already given my blood."
"This is forbidden magic, Naum," I roared, the cold realization of his betrayal sinking into my bones. Another voice cried out in desperation, but Naum simply looked at me and said, "Your Majesty, keep this in mind." A figure in a dark uniform loomed over me, sword held high, its polished steel gleaming in the golden light.
"God never presents a problem without an answer," Naum said with that same unnerving smile, just as the sword fell and blood sprayed through the air.
Answers, my ass. There was no solution for a betrayal like this, I thought, watching the crimson arc through the light. My own battered face stared back from some reflection in the golden glow, my name echoing around me as everything faded. A blood-slicked sword swung before my eyes, as a voice in my head warned me to pray I was never reborn. More crimson spattered across the floor, a brutal echo of the betrayal I had just suffered. But then a different voice cut through the chaos, soft and urgent, pleading, "Please, don't forget your majesty." The mystical threads around me shattered, the intricate spell breaking apart as that voice declared that God doesn't give us problems without answers. In the crystalline fragments, I saw my own face reflected younger, but still exhausted and slick with sweat. Other faces flickered in the shards, my own battered and defeated, and even now his expression unreadable as he watched me fall. Then another face appeared in the light, a man with a gentle smile and kind eyes, the very image of benevolence. A surge of golden power erupted from my core, and my long hair lifted as if caught in an invisible wind. My perspective shifted, and suddenly I was looking out over a vast, sun-drenched landscape toward the distant gates of the Malin estate. Then I was floating high above the estate itself, the grand manor and its manicured lawns spread out beneath me. A sharp, jarring noise echoed in my ears, pulling me out of the vision. The ornate chandelier of a grand mansion swam into focus as a familiar, panicked voice screamed my name, IAN.
Can't you even walk properly? Get up this instant.
A woman's voice chimed in with a sneer. We only took him in out of pity for his inferior mother. There's nothing to like about him. The mocking woman then turned to Lord Malin, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Oh, I suppose you still think of him as your son then. My head throbbed from the cacophony. Who were these people, and why were they so loud? The Malin mansion's ornate chandelier hung overhead, as Lord Malin's sharp command to get up right now echoed in my ears. I put a hand to my chest, completely disoriented. Who were these people? I caught our reflection in a grand mirror. Lord Malin, the mocking woman, and a blonde boy standing between them. My gaze fixed on the blonde boy's face, and a sharp pang of recognition shot through me. Who was this boy? He had my eyes, my exact expression.
Stop embarrassing your father and behave. The family register process will go smoothly if you make a good impression, and the Emperor hears about it.
Emperor, me. I stared at the blonde boy in the reflection, utterly confused. That's when I noticed the document clutched in the boy's hand, what Lord Malin had called the Emperor's Edict. Lord Malin held the document out with a casual insult about my inability to read, but my mind snagged on his words. An edict? I hadn't issued one recently. Then my gaze, this boy's gaze, fell to the date inscribed at the very bottom of the page. The letter stated it plainly, a date from 98 years ago. In that one moment, everything fell into place with a horrifying, sickening clarity. I wasn't just trapped in another person's body, I was trapped in another time. The official letter I received bore the Malin family seal, but the date printed on it was all wrong. It was dated 98 years in the past, a stark confirmation that I hadn't just been given a new body, I'd been hurled into another era entirely. I can still feel the crispness of that paper, a tangible link between a history I'd only read about and my new, sudden present. As I tried to process it all, Lord Malin's earlier words, spoken with that disquieting smile of his, echoed in my mind.
We went to great lengths to bring the central administrator here for your registration, so see that you behave and don't disappoint us.
His threat was unmistakable. My position here was precarious, and I wondered if I was fated to repeat the original Ian's exile to the barbarian lands. In the mirror, the face staring back wasn't mine. It was a stranger's, a young boy with green eyes whose life I now inhabited. That memory of swirling light and a fractured clock face was an undeniable signature of space-time magic, Naum's magic. There was no doubt in my mind that this was the work of Naum, the very same mage who had betrayed this body's original owner. When I first arrived, the vibrant green of the Malin estate was almost jarring, a world away from the desolate future I'd left behind. It was here, in this opulent house with its perfect garden, that I resolved to make my stand. Yet all this luxury couldn't quiet the gnawing hunger in my stomach, a desperate, physical need I'd never once experienced as emperor. At my first formal dinner here, all my years of imperial etiquette were useless. I found myself eating like a ravenous animal. It was utterly humiliating, but this body had been starved for so long that its base instincts simply took control. I could see Lord Malin watching from across the table, a smug, patronizing smile on his face, as if my desperation were some private amusement. His guests, meanwhile, were fawning over him, chattering about how to curry favor with the Emperor, with me, in my past life. The conversation shifted when the central administrator posed a question about philosophy, a topic just beginning to circulate in the capital, clearly testing the room. Chell, Lord Malin's eldest son, looked as if he'd just been asked to explain the Empire's most convoluted tax laws. He could only stammer, completely lost and unable to form a coherent answer. The question was a clear probe of the family's intellectual standing, and from the looks of it, they were failing spectacularly. Seeing an opportunity, I stepped in and answered, citing the work of Philin, a philosopher so obscure at this time that even most scholars hadn't heard of him. I elaborated on Philin's theories of the ideal monarch, and the central administrator's surprise was obvious as he praised the Malin household for its forward thinking. Chell's smile was strained. He knew perfectly well that no one else at that table could possibly have known that name. And Lord Malin's patronizing expression had vanished, replaced by cold, calculating eyes. I had just made myself a problem. He'd mentioned the barbarians in the east, and I knew he meant the heavenly warrior clan, my people, from my former territory of Brack. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been brought to the Malin estate, only to be threatened with exile back to the one place I could call home. The heavenly warrior clan, the very same people Naum had once used as a shield against me. I could still feel Naum's hand on my shoulder from that day, a sickeningly warm gesture that promised nothing but betrayal.
"I believe you will become a symbol of peace," Naum had said, just before he'd offered me up to my own people as a hostage.
The smile on Naum's face then was the same kind I'd learned to wear myself, a placid mask hiding a torrent of calculations. It was a stark reminder that I was trapped in this new life, in this boy's body, all thanks to Naum's twisted magic. My thoughts abruptly shifted, pulling me from that memory and back to the Malin estate, where the sounds of training echoed around me.
Do you really think you're a noble now, just because you've joined the family? The hostile noble sneered, his voice cutting through the trainees' murmurs. You should have been sent to the barbarians instead, he spat. Would you have been fine with that?
He had Barik by the collar, his grip vicious as he tried to shove the smaller boy to the ground.
How dare someone as lowly as you speak to me informally, he yelled, his face contorted with rage just as I stepped forward. Do you want to die along with your mother? He shrieked, as if that were a threat that could actually frighten me.
My eyes narrowed, and a faint golden light began to stir within them. As the power surged, the words formed effortlessly in my mind. Arrogant child. Golden energy erupted from me in a crackling, swirling torrent, a visible manifestation of my will. Overwhelmed by the sudden pressure, the hostile noble collapsed face down on the floor. He let out a pathetic squeak as my magically amplified voice echoed. Even if you're young, you should know the weight of your words. With the golden light still dancing around me, I met his eyes and delivered a clear warning. You can still survive with a shorter tongue. My eyes glowed, my expression unyielding as I finished. So be careful that it doesn't get cut.
He scrambled backward, whimpering in terror. "D, don't come closer."
I finally glanced away from the cowering noble, the golden light still shimmering around me.
Just then, Lord Mullen's voice cut through the tension from the doorway, an unsettling smile on his face. "Young masters, have some refreshments."
The golden light around me slowly receded, leaving only the image of the cowering noble and Lord Mullen's perfectly timed interruption. Lord Mullen's eyes were wide, his gaze fixed on the spot where the golden light had just vanished. Beside him, Chell and another noble were watching the scene unfold with undisguised curiosity.
What in the world is going on here?
The hostile noble, still crumpled on the floor, immediately began to stammer out an excuse. I leaned down and quietly warned him to be far more careful with expensive vases in the future. A small smile played on my lips. The message had clearly been received.
CH1-2. Please.
Chell, however, was visibly losing his patience, his expression tightening with annoyance.
Yes, right away.
Why must you be so clumsy, Chell?
Lord Mullen's sharp, calculating gaze, however, quickly returned to me. His stare brought back my first memory in this body, not of the grand estate, but of the room I'd been assigned. When I first saw the place, all I could think was that it was more like a cell, with a young maid named Hannah watching me with worried eyes.
Ian Nim, are you all right? Do you have the letter for your mother? You cried every day for me to send one, since you couldn't go out.
It seemed the boy, whose body this was, had been kept here like a prisoner, to prevent him from running away. I cleared my throat and told her, "I won't be crying anymore, so you don't have to worry." Hannah's expression changed at my words, and she seemed to brace herself for what she had to say next.
I have 5 younger siblings, Ian Nim. They can only eat if you share your food with us, so please have pity.
I watched as Hannah bowed deeply, her desperation laid completely bare. Her face was pinched with hunger, and her eyes were pleading with me. I simply gave her a small smile, and she returned it with a look of genuine, blossoming hope.
Thank you so much, Ian Nim. I will come again at dinner time.
With that settled, I finally had a moment to myself. This whole situation was already giving me a headache. This wasn't how Naum's magic was supposed to work. A space-time spell should have returned me to my point of origin. Instead, I was thrown into the past and a different body. If I want answers, there's only one place to look: the Imperial Palace's Ministry of Magic. And I will get there, no matter what it takes. That was the chapter. Subscribe for the next part of his rise.